All right, everybody. Sorry for that. For 3 minutes, I had no microphone. I actually had my microphone on mute. Yay, technical glitches. One of these days, I'll have a clean, no issue open mic event. Thanks for joining. Once again, if you are a YouTuber and love these videos but don't always get to check these on YouTube, go ahead. Check out my podcast. You can see them on iTunes. You can see them on Spotify. All the other major podcast outlets, you can definitely catch those at. So subscribe if you don't always get a chance to check out these videos. Once again, thanks for joining. This is my fourth week, fourth podcast, fourth live stream. It's interesting. I've been debating a little bit if this is the proper format that I should use. I like this kind of open Q&A type session, but the flip side is, sometimes I run into these technical glitches like I just did, not having my microphone on. Just kudos for me being an IT person and not having my microphone. And I'm actually a little disappointed in the quality sometimes. I keep on trying to tweak out the quality a little bit to get really crisp video and audio up, but it seems to be hampered a little bit from time to time. So I'm still debating if this live Q&A is the best method to do it. I'm going to keep on trying it out and tweaking out where I can, and hopefully I'll get somewhere on that. So one of the first things, if you already caught the beginning of this video but heard no audio, but I do have my new MacBook Pro in, so I got both of them in now. This is a mid 2018 silver model. It's baseline. It's 256 gig SSD, doesn't have the high-end video card in it. It does have 16 gigs of RAM. And this is going to be my gig laptop, dedicated just for my gigs. This is complemented by I have a late 2018 MacBook Pro with the Vega 20 chip, has a little bit bigger hard drive in it. But now that I'm going with my external SSD, I didn't want to rely on the super expensive, super fast, but very super expensive memory that is soldered onto the MacBook Pros. So I was able to actually get this for a really good price. Refurbished is just a hair over $2,000, which is significantly lower, a good few $100 lower than getting it new. It's been perfect so far from the testing that I've done. But in choosing the MacBook, I naturally had to choose USB-C as my connectivity to it all. And in doing so, I have unfortunately run into just a big oddity, and that is with, this is just, my beast. This thing has been a solid piece of equipment for so long. The Rain 62 is probably one of the more iconic mixers that's come to existence over the years. And there's a negative on this. There's a latency that comes out of the Rain 62 and other non-class compliant mixers when going into Mac OS. And part of the reason is that Mac OS is buffering the stream coming in so you don't overload that USB-C stream with data and effectively shut down the stream. So if you do have a class compliant mixer like the 72, like my Newmark NS7 III, I think most modern mixers now are generally class compliant. If you have that, then there's no problem, because it seems that class compliance, which uses basically a generic driver that your system can recognize, having that apparently allows the stream to come through with no problem. If you have an older device like my 62, then all bets are off. There's a good 1 second full of latency on it. It's not just scratching, it's button pushing, it's anything that's acting on the mixer itself that's controlling Serato. I was able to put everything over on my NS7 III when I was testing this all out. Of course, I had my new hub that I was testing. Everything worked just fine. So this is definitely just an issue with legacy. So it's a little bit of a bummer, because my original plan was to take my turntables out, take my 62 out, and when the phases ultimately come in, supposedly the shipping label gets made up tomorrow, and hopefully I'll have them on my lap within a few days. But my whole plan was to potentially bring those turntables and mixer out, because I really do love that setup. It's always been, I've always been the vinyl and mixer kind of thing. I've always been a modular kind of person in that regard. And I really like the controller, but there's, some oddities and just quirks with it. But now, not having the ability to go with USB-C over to the Rain 62 and not have that latency, that is a bit of a bummer. So I might have to revisit this. Maybe I end up upgrading to the 72. Maybe I go back. I had an S9 briefly. Maybe I go back to having that. Maybe I just dedicate the 62 to just my vinyl spins, my pure vinyl spins. But just an interesting thing to note, if you are considering USB-C and you have older equipment, check it out. You might be lucky that it has class compliance and everything will be fine, but it's relatively new. I know like the NS7 II does not have class compliance, the NS7 III does. So I want to say that that time frame has just been in the last couple years where you will find devices that will most likely work well with USB-C, but just be mindful before you make those purchases, because especially if you're throwing $2, $4, $6 grand out the door on a brand new MacBook Pro or even a refurbished MacBook Pro, you might find that your older equipment's no longer supported. So changing subjects a little bit, I had a question posed to me about 2 weeks ago. I had somebody who saw my UI 16 video, had some questions, and ultimately bought a unit. And then he threw this odd question at me. Do I EQ at the mixer level, or do I enable some of my DSP settings on in my case, my EV50s, but on your speakers? And it got me thinking a little bit, because I always have EQ'd at the Soundcraft. But then I was starting to really wonder that if some of my settings could end up over-impeding that signal and making at least a sound just not quite as good as it could be, or pushing it well beyond where it should be if I was really redlining or pushing it really hard. So I really didn't have a good answer to this. So I actually got a hold today of Ben Stowe, and always thank you, Ben, for just the wealth of information that you bring to the industry and whatnot. And I posed that question to him, and basically his response was basically six in one hand, half a dozen in the other. Theoretically, unless you're pushing the signal too hard from your mixer and from over to your speakers, you should not have a problem. And he personally typically mixes at the board and not at the speakers itself. So take that for what it's worth. I've been comfortably been doing this for many years now with my UI 16, with other mixers previously, and not using too much or really any other than maybe gain on my speakers. And on my Yamahas, I set my gain up a bit, like +2 to +4, depending on the event. My EV50s, I've actually never gone over the horizon on it, so I've been running them flat, both EQ and gain-wise on that. I've never had a major problem with it at all. But just a thought, if you do decide on a digital mixer or some other type of EQ in line before you get to your speakers, you really shouldn't have a problem unless you're way pushing it, go well over red line and stay there for a while. You would probably suffer from that, but you would suffer from that anyways. But that was a really interesting question that somebody posed to me. I just didn't have a good answer for. Now, long video shoots. I know a couple people saw my post from this morning. I was recirculating my UPS video that a lot of people have liked over the past time that I've had it up. And I spent, I want to dare to say, at least 8 hours of shooting this combined ceremony and reception video that I've been working on. And I threw a funny video up on the DJ Video Cave of me patiently waiting, as somebody was running a table saw in the background, and it was just frustrating. And worse, I found that video, the autofocus had turned off for half the video, so it was completely toast for my ceremony portion. I filmed inside here. The ceremony portion was fine, but then the reception portion had some really just odd happenings on it. Reshot again, corrupted audio. Went to go for my fourth shoot, and I actually started losing my voice in it. So my next video that goes out is a Frankenstein video. It's actually a combination of the two best shoots that I had. I'm hoping that people aren't too jarred by me being outside and inside, but it just is. I've learned now, 6, 7, 8, 9 hours of shooting, and now all this additional video editing that I have to do. These are fairly serious investments, and kudos to everybody out there that does these kind of videos and puts that effort in there, because it's just so intensive at times, and it can be so frustrating at times. I'm not going to make this video too long today. My voice is actually still recovering from my video shoot, so it's cracking a little bit right now. But I do want to tease something to keep your calendars open for November 3rd to November 5th in Allentown. I am not going to say anything more on the subject. You'll learn a little bit more as time goes on, but keep an eye on those dates. Keep an eye on my blog posts and a couple others as well. It should be really interesting. So I think I'm going to wrap up episode 4 of all this. Thank you again for those who saw the beginning of my video with no audio for the first 3 minutes or so. I apologize. Yay, technology. Again, if you like videos like this, check out my 4 DJs Only playlist on my YouTube channel. If you love the content that I'm throwing out there, go ahead, jump over to my Patreon page and subscribe. It's just $1 a month. And that really helps me for buying some of this equipment that I'm reviewing, the time and effort that gets put into this. It really does help. So thank you again, everybody. Have a great Tuesday and see you here next week.